What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talking Halos. I'm your host today, Jared Timms, and I'm joined alongside my co-host, my partner in crime, Nate Green. Nate, how you doing?
Doing well on this Monday. I am super excited for this week. It's going to be a grind. We'll find out where we're at. Big week.
Big week, fun week, hopefully as well. You get to play the Tigers, who Angels are beating bad teams, which is the start of a good team is when you can beat those bad teams consistently. Angels did a very good job of doing that against the Pirates and the Yankees. The Yankees aren't the best of teams right now. You look at what they're throwing out there and what the Angels got to face against the Yankees, and it makes sense why they went out there and kind of handed it to the Yankees, which was pretty cool, fun to see.
Yep.
But we're not going to talk about the Yankees series too much. Pirates series, Angels took 2 of 3. I don't want to say probably should have swept because with the offense the Angels are throwing out there, it's tough. However, Nate, Andrew Velasquez, he hit a home run for you. He pointed at you as well, rounding
Yeah.
third. And I know you're
Yeah.
at the game, standing up and
Oh yeah.
applauding him as he rounded the
Of
bases.
course. Yeah.
No,
Even
I'm
a
kidding.
blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. It's impressive.
No.
And
Jokes aside, jokes. I know you are not the biggest Andrew Velasquez fan. That's fine. Um, However, Angels playing some good baseball right now, good enough to put them in the conversation of maybe buying.
Yep.
Right?
Of course.
Maybe buying, and the way that I think you have to go about this is I don't think you're in full buy mode yet. And this is what I think is actually going to happen here. You're probably going to take the Tigers series 2 or 3 or sweep them. I think it's 3 game set. And then you go to Toronto.
Thursday.
Yeah, and Toronto's tough. Toronto's a tough series. That's a team you have to get over if you think you're going to be a playoff team. And I think that series, if the Angels win the Tigers series and they go in there and they look good against Toronto, I think there's a legitimate chance of the Angels buying there.
You got to win the Blue Jay series.
What is it? 3 game set? 4 game
Yeah.
set? 3 game set. Yeah. Yeah. You need to go in there and not just compete, but you need to go win. Like we've said it a lot, like the Angels have competed against good teams. They just haven't been able to beat good teams. They need to go in there and beat a good team and show that, they would be able to do this, in most, in an actual playoff series.
It's a big series too, for tiebreakers. There's no 163. That's why the Yankee series was so big, because they have to jump the Yankees,
Yeah.
and they now own the tiebreaker against the Yankees, which is awesome because the Angels typically handle the Yankees. But the Blue Jay series is big. They lost 2 out of 3 at home. Some runs were put up in that series. A lot of runs put up in that series. But Angels got to take at least 2 out of 3 to stay in that tiebreaker with the Blue Jays. If they lose 2 out of 3, that just makes it that much harder. You're basically playing from 1 behind wherever you're at right now. So if that series were to end and you're 4 back, you're really 5 back because you can't tie with Toronto. So that is a big series with some bigger playoffs things at stake than people realize, I think.
And a possibility of Shohei Ohtani's last start, and we'll kind of get into that here shortly. With that being said, let's go back to the Pirates series.
Mhm.
You want to take anything away from that? It's not a bad team. You beat Mitch Keller, which is an ace, Nate, by the way. Don't tell me he's not an
That's a
ace. Pitching well.
that's a loose that he's not an ace on probably 28 teams in
He's
the
a 1.
majors.
Can we say he's a 1?
He's a
He's a good 2.
If they called up their number 1 overall pick, he would not be the one on that team.
Hang on, who's that? Who are you talking about?
If they called up the kid they took 1 overall, he
Oh
is
yeah.
not the number
Yes.
1 on that team.
I blanked on that one. I
Yeah.
went back a year and I was like, wait, who? Tremar
You're
Johnson?
like,
Like, what are you talking?
what?
Paul,
Tremar
yeah,
Johnson? Yeah,
that's
no.
fair.
Paul Skeens would be the number 1 on that team if he got called up tomorrow. So yeah, it's great you beat a pitcher who's pitched well, an all-star, but like not an ace. Not an ace. If he was, he's pitched well this year though. So like good win. It
It's
is
like
funny how the
it's
Angels
impossible.
really score a lot of runs for Tyler Anderson. It's funny.
I
It's
was
like they're
thinking
like,
about that as I was watching the game too. I'll
yeah,
watch Anderson pitch. Anderson
every
pitched
time.
well. He
Every
pitched
time he
well.
pitches, we gotta score. We gotta score 7. Like that's it, it's literally like the mindset they go into the game with is Tyler showing it. All right, 7 runs gives us a chance.
He pitched. I thought he pitched well though. He stayed out. He did what he needed to do, which is stay out of the middle of the plate. If you're throwing 88 to 91, you got to stay out of the middle of the plate. He kept the changeup down. So I thought he pitched well. But yes, I was thinking about that. I was like, the Angels score a lot of runs for Tyler Anderson. They don't score a lot of runs for Shohei Ohtani.
No.
In fact, I feel like you see bad lineups for Shohei Ohtani when he
Well,
pitches.
Nevin talked about that earlier
Yeah,
in the year when he was like, "Hey, would we like to give guys an off day when Shohei pitches? Yeah, because we still have a shot to win if Shohei pitches and we give Rendon and Trout off days,
yeah,
but we don't have a chance to win if we're giving off days when other guys are pitching." So
yep.
he didn't name names, but I think we can fill in the blanks there.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, and I that's kind of a bad mindset to come into games with. However, it's working. Angels are 2 games above 500 right now at the 100 game mark. Um, let's move on to this Tigers series real quick before we dive into what we actually want to dive into. Angels need to sweep. I think it's kind of like plain and simple as that. You got to go into Detroit and you got to have the mindset that you're going to sweep and you're going to play good fundamental baseball, and you cannot let one thing that goes bad, you know, be the end all of that game. You need to be able to compete. You need to be able to show that you can come back. And you need to beat a bad team. You need to sweep a bad team. I think you need to. If you think you're competing and you think that you're going to go in and buy at the deadline, you need to go and sweep this Detroit Tigers team. So, Nate, I don't know if you have anything else on that side of stuff. I don't even know if you want to break down the Tigers series. I think they're gonna. I think you're going to see some good pitching.
Really
I
good
think
pitching.
you're gonna
They
see
ran
good
into
pitching.
a tough matchup. They're going to start with Eduardo Rodriguez, who
Yep.
has pitched well this year from the left side, which again I think doesn't help the Angels with some of the platoon matchups they're running out there. You might not see Moniak. Trey Cabbage has been swinging the bat a little bit. He's left-handed, so you might not see him. There are some things that Theis has been swinging it pretty well as well. At least he's hitting the ball hard. It might not be falling, but he's hitting the ball hard.
Yep.
So like things like that where you might not see some of those guys. Rengifo swings it a little bit better from the right side typically, so you should see Rengifo if things go right.
Hope that Neto's back and healthy.
Yeah, that's a big key. If Neto's back, it really helps that lineup. If he's not back, that's going to be tough because honestly, like as weird as this sounds, like the way that things have been working, I know Shohei Ohtani's been the best hitter, but when Neto goes, that lineup goes. Like no matter how bad that lineup that is we're running out there, if Neto gets on base, he creates havoc. He might not be stealing bases, but he just does things where he takes extra bases. He plays the game hard. He causes a lot of havoc on the bases. So they do need Neto back. And yeah, when he goes, they go. So that's a big one. And then you're going to run into your old friend, Michael Lorenzen. That's going to be an interesting one.
Maybe.
He was, I think he pitches there.
Maybe.
I do. I think the 26th, it's not far enough. It's far enough out where he makes that start. And Tucker's, like the new regime wants to do some things. They want to bring in some of their guys, and so yeah, Lorenzen probably gets moved over the next week or two. But I think he's really, how do I say this? I think he's option B for a lot of teams, where like option A might be Shohei Ohtani, or it might be Max Scherzer, or it might be Dylan Cease. It might even be Lucas Giolito or Jack Flaherty. If we miss out on that guy or we find out the asking price is too high, then we can circle back around and get Michael Lorenzen. So I think he is closer to a July 31st deal than a July 25th deal, but I could be wrong there. And then a guy I like a lot, Matt Manning, is going to start. He hasn't pitched too much this year with the injuries and things like that, but Silseth is going to go up against him. That's going to be a fun matchup. You guys know I'm a Silseth guy. So I really think that Silseth needs to just be left alone. Like pick a spot for him and leave him there. If he's going to be in the rotation, leave him in the freaking rotation. if he's going to go to the bullpen, leave him in the bullpen. Stop with this back and forth thing. I think personally, leave him in the starting rotation until he proves otherwise. But the other thing, Riley Green's back. He's been playing well for the Tigers. Torkelson's starting to swing it. So there are some things that make this a little bit more interesting series than maybe a month and a half ago when Torkelson wasn't swinging it, Riley Green was hurt, Javi Baez
you have to face
wasn't.
good pitching.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like Eduardo Rodriguez is healthy, Screwball is healthy, even though he's not pitching in the series. Manning is healthy, and you just start going, and it was like even Lorenzen was banged up for a little bit. So they kind of have some guys that are just like randomly playing well because they're either journeymen and just getting an opportunity, or they're young and like, hey, you were in AAA, we'll just call you up, and they're playing well. So the good thing about the Tigers, their bullpen has just been okay. There are certain guys in that pen who have been good, but they're also like the majority of that pen has been eh. So just because the Angels get down early, or just because the Tigers get a lead, does not mean they will hold that lead, depending on how long these guys throw. So that is one good thing about this series, is the bullpen favors the Angels for sure. I would say the starting rotation favors the Tigers, and then the offense, it's going to be a coin flip for both sides because they're probably both going to be running out there some really weird and bad lineups. So interesting. AJ Hinch manages well against the Angels too, so that's going to be another thing to think about. So yeah, this is going to be a fun, tougher series than I think people want to admit. I think a lot of people look at it and go, "Well, Detroit's not that good. They're 46-54, so they're going to be a team that we sweep because that's kind of the teams we've been beating this year." And I think it's a little bit tougher than that with the matchups.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always like Tigers. When you bring out when you draft the way they have, and you made the acquisitions that they have, they're not too far out from being a contender. I mean, dude, even this year, if they rattle off a couple of games, that Central is not out of
They're only
reach.
7 games out of the
It's weird.
division.
Yeah, as weird as that sounds, all you have to do is rattle off a couple of games. Not saying that they're going to be buyers by any means, but
No, not at all. They're sellers.
all of a sudden you sweep the Angels and the Twins, lose 2 of 3, and the Indians lose 2 of 3. It's like, oh wow, we're 5 games out. We're 4 games out, something like that. With and all of a sudden that you become a buyer. As weird as that sounds, like
I don't think they have enough time to get back in
no,
this thing to
I don't
buy.
think
But
so either. But
Angels are 8 games
it takes
out.
a series like that. It takes a series
Yeah.
like that.
But same thing. Angels are 8 games out. So like, if they can win this series and Texas can struggle here, like now you're 5 games out of the division, 6 games out of the division, and you're only 2 games out of the wild card, or 1 game out of the wild card. So they're in the tough part that I hate the most, where you're in this teeter-totter effect of like, are they actually buyers or are actually sellers? And you have to create a number in your mind and say, if we are 2 games back or less, we're buyers. If we're 3 games back or more, we're sellers. You cannot play the game of we're going to buy and sell. You can't play the game of we're going to stand pat and hope these injured guys come back, because we've seen that come back to bite them as well. So that's what this week is really going to be about, finding out for sure, are we buyers, are we sellers? Lucas Giolito, Tim Anderson makes some sense in a combo pack. They've got Graveman and Joe Kelly there. Like there are some pieces to be had, especially Chicago being one of them. The Cubs are like, the White Sox and Cubs both are probably going to be selling.
And also, when you look at the Angels farm system, this was just brought up to me. Is there anybody that you'd be like, yeah, I don't want to trade this guy? Like there's one, maybe 2
if you're
guys.
counting Logan O'Hoppe and Chase Silseth, those are probably the 2 guys that you're not wanting to move. I don't want to move Silseth just because he's a starting pitcher, and like, he actually has proven he can start a little bit more than some of these other guys. Because
I'd say guys like Nelson Rada, Denzer Guzman, but even those guys, it's like,
for the right price, I'm moving those guys. Like I'm not moving Nelson Rada or Denzer Guzman for a Michael Lorenzen type of rental piece. But like, if it's a Lucas Giolito, Jack Flaherty rental piece, and it gets me in the postseason and a guy who can start game one or actually game two of the postseason, like, yeah, let's do it. So those are the type of rental pieces I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a Seth Lugo type of guy.
And great transition here into our last topic, which is rental pieces. And I don't think we can go a podcast at the moment. I don't think a lot of people can go a day at the moment without talking about a possible Shohei Ohtani trade. We actually got an article written up on talkinghalos.com if you haven't seen it already, with about nine possible trades that the Angels could make that, make a lot of sense. I think after having some conversations with some people, I think that we kind of almost undershot it in a sense. But that is why a Shohei Ohtani trade is so difficult. It's and I'm going to throw around a big word here. It's very hard to quantify that's the word of the day, a Shohei Ohtani trade for many aspects, and we're going to try our best to do it here right now for you guys. The biggest reason is you get Shohei Ohtani, the hitter, which you got to take that in. You get Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, you got to take that into effect. Nate, you would be mad if I didn't say this. You get the opportunity to talk with him before anybody else. And then I'd be mad.
You have a free 2 months to sell him
to try to extend
on staying.
Exactly.
And you're going to get the 10-day or the 7-day window after the World Series to sign him when nobody else can talk to him. So you could technically wrap this up before even getting in a bidding war with the Dodgers or the Mets.
Plus, think about all the revenue that you bring in with Shohei Ohtani.
The Yankees already know what you're talking about, because the Yankees they sell Shohei Ohtani road jerseys, and those things sell out on Friday night of a Friday, Saturday, Sunday series.
Yep.
So I already know there are teams that have seen that and they can't imagine what it would be like to acquire someone like this. But yeah, it's going to be tough to see, and I think you're going to have some desperate teams. I think you and I have talked about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And not going to throw around any current names right now. I'm sure down the road we'll probably throw out some names. But right now, the best way to quantify it is find a pitcher that was traded at the deadline in the past, right? Find a hitter that was traded in the past that had, that was a rental that had 2 years of control. That's very similar to Ohtani. I think we kind of found it. I think it's close.
2 months of control.
2 months of control. I think we kind of found that. So you look back at it, and I think Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, very similar to the CC Sabathia to the Brewers.
He was one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball at that time.
Absolutely. You look at what the Brewers got back, and that's Rob Bryson, Zach Jackson, Matt Laporta, Michael Brantley. Matt Laporta was actually the big piece in that trade, just couldn't stay healthy. When you look at the offensive side of things, the only trade that kind of really made sense, I had somebody bring up a JD Martinez type trade when he went. Manny Machado going to the Dodgers. I think that's one of the trades in the past that makes a lot of sense in it. That brought back Yasniel Diaz, Dean Kramer, Rylan Brannon, Breivik, Valera, and Zach Pop. When you look at those two trades, the big names, of course, Matt Laporta and Yasniel Diaz, didn't turn out to be much, which probably scares a lot of people in that aspect. And I totally understand why. Big names were Michael Brantley and Dean Kramer on that side of stuff. So again, like you just don't know.
Zach Pop has even been good as well. Like,
yeah,
Baltimore got some pieces that helped them with their rebuild.
Yeah,
and that's the one thing that's different. The little bit of a difference between Baltimore and the Angels. Baltimore was in a full-fledged rebuild. This is when they really started their tanking. Yeah. Cleveland kind of operating the way that they normally operate, where it's like, yes, we're kind of in this thing, but we're not in this thing. So we're not in a full-fledged rebuild where we have to get, 17, 18-year-old kids. We'll take the 22, 23-year-old kids that aren't going to cost us anything and are going to help us a year from now. So I do like the CC Sabathia trade. I know you and I talked about the Machado trade. That's the one thing with Baltimore, though, is like they were just going for give me 6 dudes and hopefully 1 or 2 of these guys fit our timeline with our rebuild.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing, however, that we did not put into factor here, and I think this is actually a game changer in a Shohei Ohtani type trade, is that I think somebody would have to pay the Angels money. From a business perspective, Nate, we've talked about this a lot, just to kind of like overthrow what Shohei Ohtani is bringing to the organization money wise. Like, could you imagine, and that reported today by John Morosi, if let's say the O's decided Jackson Holiday and 2 other pieces, 2 pitching prospects, nothing too crazy on that side of stuff, but Jackson Holiday, 2 other pitching prospects, plus $25 million to be like, here you go, Artie, here's $25 million as well. I think that makes everybody happy. As weird as that sounds, I don't know. I don't know if that like is a possible, answer, and we're not going to be Skip Bayless over here and throw in draft picks, but
you see that Skip.
Well, who was it? That was Skip.
It was Colin.
Oh, Colin Cowherd. Same thing. Regardless, I think that would actually push Artie, who loves money, to be like, okay, like I'm getting $25 million back with everything else I've made from Shohei Ohtani. I don't think that like is the answer, but I think that that's like, as crazy as that sounds, and how almost impossible it is to quantify a Shohei Ohtani trade, and why at the end of the day a Shohei Ohtani trade probably isn't going to happen, just because nothing is going to make sense to anybody, and if a trade does happen, it's going to absolutely blow everybody out of the water, or it's going to be like, oh, you only got that for Shohei Ohtani. It's going to be that's the huge issue with everything is it's one side or another side. There's not a perfect trade. Someone's going to have to blow you out of the water. Jackson Holiday, Jordan Lawler, it's a top 5 prospect type of guy. Or plus like, more,
or like 5 or 6 guys like the Mariners or Yankees might have to do, or Dodgers.
So it just I don't think it's going to happen. I know, we've made a lot, we've pushed a lot for a Shohei Ohtani type trade, but I just don't see it happening. So you're going to get the pup on TV here. He needs some airtime here. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat where it's going to be hard to get this thing done. But I think that if you lose to Toronto, especially if you lose 2 out of 3 or get swept, and don't sweep Detroit, you're going to have to find something that works, because we cannot go through another trade deadline of not trading anyone. And like, does Renfroe get traded if the Angels lose 2 out of 3 to Detroit? Does Renfroe get traded before the Blue Jay series? Or does Matt Moore get traded before the Blue Jay series, and you really start to see things? So those are the things that are really going to start to come up. And do we even need Hunter Renfroe is another question that could be answered because of the way that some of the guys have played lately. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a fun week. I'm excited to see what happens. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Regardless, it's fun that we're actually talking about the Angels being competitive, because it hasn't happened a lot in the past. Where the Angels have been in a spot that we're talking about possibly buying, so it's still a lot of fun to see where the Angels are, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. This is gonna be a fun week of baseball, and I'm excited for it. So, guys, as always, thank you so much for listening to this podcast here at Talking Halos. Again, drop a comment in the comment section down below if you're watching us on YouTube. Let us know what you think of the podcast. You can follow myself on Twitter, Jared_Tims, Nate at NateGreen34. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.